Don Carver had always found solace at the edge of the small lake tucked behind his modest ranch home on the outskirts of rural Crestview Heights. Every Friday evening, without fail, he would gather his old wool blanket, a battered thermos of coffee, and a worn-out photo album and head to his private campsite by the water. For most, it was just a calm, quiet body of water. But for Dan, it was sacred. The lake wasn't just any piece of land. It was the last place he had danced with his wife, Emily, before cancer claimed her 2 years ago. Every detail still clung to his memory: the glow of lantern light on the rippling water, the smell of honeysuckle in the breeze, and the faint twinkle of stars reflected in Emily's eyes. Camping by the lake became more than a habit, it was an emotional anchor. It reminded him who he was before grief dulled his edges. That particular Friday evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the lake in gold and purple hues, Dan lit his campfire. The crackling flames were the only sound against the chirping crickets. He opened his album and flipped to the page with a Polaroid of Emily in her red flannel jacket, laughing with her feet in the water. He touched the photo gently, his calloused fingers trembling. A soft breeze whispered through the cypress trees. Dan tilted his head back, breathed deeply, and let the memories wrap around him. He had no idea that peace would soon be shattered. It began with headlights around midnight. Just as Dan was pouring the last of the coffee into his tin mug, a sudden flood of blinding blue and white lights tore through the darkness. The flashing lights cast wild shadows across the trees, and Dan squinted toward the source, blinking in disbelief. 3 county patrol cars skidded to a stop just beyond the tree line, their tires crunching the gravel. "What in the hell?" Dan muttered, rising to his feet. Doors flew open. 4 officers stepped out, hands resting near their holsters. At the center of them, wearing a navy blue blazer with a gold Crestview Heights HOA pin and high heels that made her teeter awkwardly on the uneven terrain, was Patricia Ellison, the HOA president, the woman whose reputation for control and condescension made her the stuff of neighborhood legend. She marched toward him, flashlight in hand like a sword, and declared, "You are trespassing on HOA land, Mr. Carver." Don stared at her, stunned. "Trespassing? This is my lake." One of the deputies, a young officer with uncertain eyes, stepped forward. "Sir, we received a formal complaint that this land is designated HOA-maintained watershed property. You're not allowed to camp here." Dan blinked. "Watershed? My wife and I bought this land over a decade ago. I camp here every week." Patricia rolled her eyes. "That may have been true then. But the HOA has since reclassified this area as shared environmental space." "You reclassified my damn land." Dan's voice rose, anger bubbling beneath his grief. "You are out of compliance," she snapped. "Now please vacate the premises." Dan looked to the officers. One of them, Deputy Brian Walsh, had been a fishing buddy of Dan's a few years ago. Brian looked away, ashamed. "This isn't over," Dan said through clenched teeth, grabbing his backpack. He didn't want a scene. Not here, not where Emily's memory still lingered. He snuffed out the fire and walked to his truck, flanked by deputies. The last thing he saw before driving off was Patricia, arms crossed, smirking. Don didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table, documents spread out before him. Deeds, land surveys, purchase agreements, everything proving that the lake and the land surrounding it belonged solely to him. He read over the documents again and again. There were no easements, no shared agreements, nothing that even remotely gave the HOA a claim. The property was part of the original Carver homestead. Emily had fallen in love with it the day they found it. Dan had poured every dime into making it theirs, and now Patricia Ellison was standing there with police, throwing out terms like watershed and shared jurisdiction. Don typed the phrase into his old laptop. He scoured local government archives. There had been a community vote last year about new land designations. He had ignored it at the time, figured it didn't apply to him. His land wasn't part of the HOA. He never signed a single agreement. So what changed? Then it struck him. New borders. The HOA had been expanding its territory, quietly, property by property. Some neighbors had joked about it. Others had gotten formal letters. The HOA wasn't elected by the community. It was a private group that had essentially seized power. Dan realized Patricia was playing a dangerous game, and she was used to getting her way. The next morning, Dan marched straight to the Crestview municipal office. He slammed the thick folder of his documents on the counter. "I need someone to confirm this land hasn't been reclassified or stolen out from under me by the HOA," he said to the startled clerk. It took some digging, but the city planner on duty confirmed what Dan already knew. "According to our records, Mr. Carver, you still own the lake outright. There are no easements, no municipal claims, and no HOA rights registered with us." Dan exhaled. "Thank you. Can I get that in writing?" He left the building with the confirmation letter in hand. That piece of paper meant everything. That night, just after dusk, he drove back to the lake and parked his truck at the top of the hill. He sat in the cab, windows down, breathing in the night air. A car approached, not flashing red and blue this time, just a sleek black SUV. Patricia stepped out. Don got out slowly, holding the papers. I have proof the land is mine. You have no right to send cops to harass me. She didn't even glance at the documents. Instead, she smirked. You really think a piece of paper scares me? Dan narrowed his eyes. What do you want from me? Control, order, compliance. The HOA is bigger than you, Mr. Carver. She got back in her car and left without another word. Dan stood alone in the dark, grip tightening around the folder. The next day, Don received a call from Deputy Brian Walsh. Can we talk? Off the record, Brian said. They met at a diner on Route 16. Away from Crestview. Brian looked tired, his uniformed shirt wrinkled, coffee-stained. He leaned in, voice low. I shouldn't have gone along with it, Dan. But the department's been in bed with the HOA for months. Patricia promised funding for the sheriff's new office and patrol cars if we enforce HOA claims. Dan stared at him. So you were just following orders? It's more complicated than that. She's got the county judge in her pocket too. And a few people on the zoning board. They're trying to redraw boundaries so the lake becomes theirs legally retroactively. Dan shook his head. That's not how laws work. Brian shrugged. They count on people not fighting. Most roll over. You didn't. That's why she's pushing harder. Don leaned back, heart pounding. Then I pushed back harder. Brian looked him in the eye. Be careful. Patricia doesn't just play dirty. She plays final. As Don drove away from the diner, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen. Anonymous message. Leave the lake or you'll lose more than land. Don stared at the screen, jaw clenched. It was no longer about camping or lakes. It was war. The sun cast long, golden rays over the sprawling backyard as laughter drifted from clusters of folding chairs and picnic tables. Kids darted between games of cornhole and badminton, while older relatives chatted under canopies, nursing sweet tea and cold beer. The reunion was in full swing, and it was everything Emma had hoped for until Karen Mitchell, HOA president turned self-appointed moral authority, took it upon herself to voice her disapproval of 14-year-old Melanie's bright blue hair. Karen spotted Melanie near the grill and zeroed in. With her arms crossed and lips pursed, she approached like a storm cloud drifting across an otherwise sunny day. Well, what do we have here? Karen said loudly enough to draw nearby eyes. A Smurf in our midst. Melanie froze, a paper plate of potato salad in her hand. Her smile wilted. Around her, a few adults exchanged looks. Emma, from the far end of the patio, narrowed her eyes and began making her way over. Karen wasn't done. You know, sweetie, back in my day, girls didn't have to dye their hair to get attention. Melanie blinked, unsure how to respond. Her mother, Aunt Kendra, stood up from her chair. Excuse me, Kendra said, moving toward them. That was uncalled for. Karen turned her full attention to Kendra now. I'm just saying, it's a shame that we let children make themselves look ridiculous in the name of expression. It reflects poorly on all of us. That did it. A murmur spread through the family, and Uncle Darrell, who'd been silent most of the afternoon, rose from the Domino's table. You don't get to insult our kids and call it advice, he said firmly. Karen's eyes flared. I'm simply trying to uphold some standards. Is that so terrible? Emma had arrived by now, her jaw tight. What you're doing is bullying a teenager at a family reunion. Karen, you're out of line. No, Karen snapped. What's out of line is how this family has embraced chaos over class. I was raised with manners and decency. Then act like it. Emma shot back, because right now, all anyone sees is a bitter woman who can't stand not being in control. Karen flushed, deep red, chest heaving. She looked around at the circle that had formed and nearly a third of the reunion was now watching. She tried to compose herself, but the damage was done. She huffed, turned on her heel, and stormed off toward the main house. Emma turned to Melanie and bent down. Your hair looks awesome, she said softly, loud enough for a few others to hear. Melanie smiled, and the air slowly began to clear, while the reunion resumed and the tension began to dissolve. One man stood off to the side, leaning near the garden trellis with his hands folded in front of him. Police Chief Miguel Reyes wore plain clothes for the event, dark jeans, a checked shirt, but his posture and presence still radiated authority. He had said little all day, content to observe, but Karen's outburst had stirred an old memory. Later, as the sun dipped and the family gathered around fire pits for stories and marshmallows, Reyes approached Emma near the drinks table. Mind if I sit? He asked, motioning to the open chair beside her. Emma nodded. Of course, you've been quiet today. He chuckled softly. Sometimes it's better to listen than speak, especially when people reveal who they really are. Emma tilted her head. You're talking about Karen. I recognized her the moment I saw her, Reyes said, voice low. About 3 years ago, there was a case. A family over in Greenwood Ridge, mixed race, nice folks, moved in from Dallas. Within weeks, they started getting anonymous complaints through the HOA code violations. Grass an inch too long, porch decorations inappropriate, Same style of nitpicking I saw today. Emma's expression hardened. Let me guess. Karen was present there too. She was. When they refused to cave in, she tried to get the board to fine them into submission. One night their mailbox got smashed in. Then someone filed a report with Child Protective Services and found it. Of course. Emma's stomach turned. That's vile. They moved out 6 months later, Reyes said. Never filed a lawsuit. Too tired to keep fighting. She tried that on us too. She hasn't changed a bit. Reyes looked her in the eye. I've got a long memory, Emma. So does the law. You let me know if she steps over the line again. Emma nodded, feeling both grateful and vindicated. The next day, the mood of the reunion brightened again, but Karen, true to form, seemed determined to leave her mark. Having been thoroughly embarrassed the day before, she emerged like a wounded animal looking for a fight. It began with the brisket. She made a point of hovering near the grill and loudly commenting to anyone who passed, "Is this smoked or just burned? My husband would never have let that out of the smoker looking like that." Then came the parking debacle. Several cars had overflowed onto the grass near the orchard fence line. Karen clutched her clipboard where she had apparently written down license plates. "I just want to let everyone know," she announced during lunch. Standing on the patio like a town crier, that blocking emergency vehicle access is a serious issue. I've noted down which vehicles are violating code. The HOA will be issuing warnings. What HOA? Someone muttered. Not her HOA, someone else added. Karen forged ahead, undeterred. And for those of you who think lawn flamingos and inflatable Santas are charming, our community has aesthetic standards. I saw several violations on my way here. Don't think I won't report them. That did it. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, followed by several sarcastic claps. Cousin Marco yelled from across the yard. "Karen, it's June. Santa's on vacation." Even Emma cracked a grin. Karen flushed but pushed her sunglasses up on her nose and stalked back to her table. "She really brought a clipboard to a cookout," whispered Kendra. "She can't help herself," Emma replied. By late afternoon, the mood had grown strained again. Despite people trying to move on, Karen's continued meddling was dragging down the spirit of the reunion. Children who once roamed freely now hovered near their parents. Adults spoke in quieter tones. Uncle Rick, a Vietnam vet with a deep baritone voice and the no-nonsense temperament of a man who'd seen real hardship, finally stood up. He walked directly toward Karen, who sat beneath the pop-up shade with a scowl. "Karen," he said loudly, and the entire yard seemed to pause. "You've insulted our kids, nitpicked our food, threatened our guests, and tried to act like this is one of your board meetings. This is a family reunion, not a regime. If you can't treat people with kindness, then maybe you shouldn't be here." Karen gaped at him. "Excuse me, you heard me," Rick said, voice steel. "Nobody's perfect, but you've spent 2 days trying to make everyone miserable. If you've got something against how we live or raise our kids, keep it to yourself or leave." Silence followed, thick, pulsing silence. Even the wind seemed to pause. Emma felt a rush of gratitude toward her uncle. So did several others, who nodded in silent agreement. Karen's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. For once, the woman had no comeback. She picked up her purse, stood, and walked slowly away from the crowd, disappearing behind the house. The reunion, without her presence, breathed again. With the tension finally diffused, Emma saw an opportunity. She whistled, clapping her hands. "Hey, all cousins under 20 gathered near the oak tree. It's photo time." The kids and teens, eager for something fun, ran over, laughing and shoving playfully. Melanie, blue hair and all, was first in line. Emma directed them like a cheerful camp counselor, tall ones in the back, little ones in the front. No bunny ears until the second photo. Parents watched from lawn chairs, smiling as the kids assembled. Chief Reyes took the camera and helped snap the shots. "Okay," Emma called out, "now make a silly face." The resulting picture dozens of cousins with their tongues out, eyes crossed, arms flung over each other, would hang on family fridges for years to come. Later, Emma uploaded the pictures to the reunion's shared folder, captioning them, "Real family, real joy. No clipboards allowed." People laughed, commented, and began to relax again. For the first time all weekend, the atmosphere felt like home, and as the stars began to dot the sky above the fire pit, marshmallows toasted, and kids danced to music. Karen was nowhere to be found. And nobody missed her. The reunion had begun winding down as the sun dipped below the tree line. Fireflies blinked in the long grass, and an easy calm fell over the backyard. Most of the kids were sitting by the fire pit making s'mores while the adults talked in hushed tones, softened by good food and time. Inside the house, though, a different energy was stirring. Bridget and Sammy, two teenage cousins known for their curiosity and ability to sniff out trouble like hounds, had gone inside to get a card deck and a charger from the den. As they passed through the hallway, Bridget tugged Sammy's arm and pointed toward the kitchen. There stood Karen, her back to them, snapping pictures with her phone. She wasn't taking casual reunion photos, she was carefully aiming her camera at the recycling bin, the kitchen sink, and a stack of mail on the counter. Then she walked toward the guest bathroom and photographed the towel rack. "What is she doing?" Bridget whispered. "Dude, is she documenting our aunt's house?" Sammy whispered back. They ducked behind the wall and watched as Karen opened a hall closet and took another photo, this time of light bulbs and cleaning supplies. Bridget had seen enough. She stepped out. "Hey, what are you doing?" Karen startled, phone still in her hand. "Excuse me, you're not supposed to be in here taking pictures of people's personal stuff," Sammy said, stepping forward behind his cousin. Karen straightened up. "I have every right to. This is a public safety matter. There are numerous code violations. In this home," Bridget crossed her arms. "This isn't part of your neighborhood. This is our family's house. You're not the HOA queen of this reunion." Karen bristled. "When people are careless with cleaning chemicals, improperly store waste, or have loose wiring, it becomes a hazard, and someone needs to hold them accountable. You need to leave," Bridget said. No, the standoff was broken when Emma appeared in the doorway. Having overheard the commotion, her face went cold when she saw Karen inside the house with her phone out. "You're trespassing," Emma said. "Get out. Right now." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but Emma raised her hand. "No debate, no explanation. You have 5 seconds before I call Chief Reyes and show him your camera roll." For a split second, Karen stood her ground, then slowly turned, marched past Emma, and exited through the front door. Outside, the music played on, unaware of the drama inside. Later that night, after the kids had gone to bed and the embers of the fire pit had cooled, Emma sat at the back porch with Chief Reyes, her phone in her hand and her mind racing. "I didn't want to drag you into this again," she said, but Karen was inside the house. "Chief." She was photographing drawers, storage, closets. Reyes's brow darkened. She entered the home. Emma nodded. No invitation, no reason. Just ... snooping and taking pictures like she was building a case. "That's not just weird," Reyes said. "That's unlawful." He leaned forward, taking a small notebook from his pocket. "You said she took pictures of mail." "Yes, and the closet, the cleaning supplies. That could qualify as unlawful surveillance. And if she wasn't given permission to enter the home, especially, not the private areas, we're talking about criminal trespass." Emma swallowed hard. "Can we actually do anything?" "Yes," Reyes said, the moment she crossed that threshold without consent and started documenting what she found. She moved beyond obnoxious into illegal. "If she disseminates or uses those photos to harass or target your family, she will," Emma said. "She always does." Reyes stood. "Then I'll talk to her. But I want you to text me a statement. Date, time, what you saw. And if you can get me a witness statement from those 2 teenagers, even better." Emma nodded. "They're more than ready." As he headed toward his truck, Reyes added, "She thinks being the HOA president gives her immunity. But if she tries this again, I'll press charges myself." By dawn the next day, the calm of the countryside had turned cold with outrage. The family group chat was buzzing one by one. Relatives were discovering the HOA's online community forum had a new post. Karen Mitchell had published an urgent safety warning about the property hosting the family reunion. The post read, "As a concerned member of the neighborhood, I regret to report that the home at 441 Sycamore Ridge where a large gathering took place this weekend is in significant violation of municipal safety codes. Improperly stored hazardous materials, fire hazards, and poor sanitation pose serious risk. As HOA president, I have documented these violations and submitted a formal complaint to county officials. Community safety comes first." Attached were photos cleverly cropped, filtered, and stripped of context. A bottle of bleach sat alone on a shelf. A dish rag in the sink was portrayed as unhygienic. The recycling bin was shown without its lid. Even a spilled box of board games was framed as trip hazards. Emma stared at the post on her phone, her hands trembling. Her mother's home, her childhood sanctuary, was being used in a digital smear campaign. By mid-morning, comments flooded the forum. Some echoed Karen's claims, emboldened by her title. Others, neighbors with more decency, pushed back, questioning her motives and calling the post vindictive and unprofessional. Emma had seen enough. With a level head and steady fingers, Emma sat down to craft a reply. She wasn't going to stoop to Karen's level. She would speak the truth, clearly and professionally. She titled her post, "Setting the Record Straight, the Truth About 441 Sycamore Ridge," she began, "as the homeowner's daughter and organizer of this weekend's family reunion. I feel compelled to respond to the false and inflammatory post made by Karen Mitchell, current HOA president. What she has described as a public safety issue was, in fact, a private family event in a home that she entered without permission." She laid out the facts that Karen had been witnessed and confronted by 2 minors while inside the home taking photos without authorization, that the house was not within the jurisdiction of her HOA's governing power for such matters, that Chief Reyes, a member of law enforcement, had already been notified and was reviewing the matter for potential legal action. She concluded, "Our family has welcomed neighbors, supported this community, and respected its values. We expect the same in return. We will not allow personal grudges or abuse of power to define our reputation or silence our voice." Then, she attached witness statements from Bridget and Sammy, a brief note from Chief Reyes, confirming he was investigating a report of criminal trespass and digital defamation. Within minutes, the post began gaining traction. Neighbors started weighing in. Some who had long stayed silent about Karen's behavior finally spoke up. "She's gone too far this time. Time for a vote of no confidence. Karen's power trip needs to end." Karen, for the first time in years, was losing control of the narrative. On the final morning of the reunion, the family gathered early beneath the canopy for breakfast. The sun rose gently behind the sycamores, casting long shadows on the dew-covered grass. Pancakes sizzled, coffee steamed, and people moved slowly, savoring the quiet strength of shared resilience. At the edge of the property, a black SUV rolled up quietly. Chief Reyes stepped out in uniform this time, calm, steady, and deliberate. Walked up the front path to the white cottage where Karen had stayed overnight. She had not returned home since the confrontation. He knocked firmly. Karen opened the door in a robe, startled. Her eyes flicked to the badge and clipboard. "Karen Mitchell," he said, "I'm delivering this in person." He handed her a document in a plastic sleeve, a formal notice of investigation. At the bottom, in clear font, were the words "potential violations, unlawful surveillance, criminal trespass, digital defamation. You'll be hearing from the county as well," Reyes added. "Until this is resolved, I suggest you refrain from further communication about the Sycamore Ridge property or its residents." Karen paled. "You're serious, dead serious," he said. "You crossed a line. You're not above the law." He turned and left. Back at the breakfast, Emma stood on a bench, holding a Polaroid camera. She waved everyone in. "Come on, one last photo. Every cousin, uncle, aunt, neighbor get in here." They huddled together, all ages and sizes, arms wrapped over shoulders. Laughter bubbled up. When Emma snapped the shutter, she captured more than just a moment. She captured defiance, family, and peace. Karen watched from her window as they smiled without her, and the story was finally no longer hers to control.